Have you ever got into trouble for doing something right? No? Doing something wrong. For doing something wrong. Now, at this point, I could say, would you like to share it with the group? But you might not want to share it with the group if you've done something wrong. Whether this was on the way here, whether it was last week, last year, perhaps when you were a child. Have you ever got in trouble for doing something wrong? I wonder what that might be. But also, have you ever got in trouble, as I mucked it up at the beginning, for doing something right? There's something about that. You think, I did the right thing and I still got in trouble. Or I did the right thing and precisely because I did the right thing, I got in trouble. Well, today we're looking at the story of Daniel, as I said. And he's a guy who got in trouble, in big trouble, for doing the right thing, for going God's way. What I want to do is we're going to turn in our Bibles to this reading here. Can you put that up there, Dan? So we're in Daniel 6. It's on page 892. And we're going to read part of it from the Church Bible. And also, Dan, if you press it again, we're going to read the first part from the Jesus Storybook Bible that we've been reading from for the last few Sundays. Now, those of you who were here last week know that we blow all the church budget on the actors, okay, for David and Goliath. So thank you for those who are involved in that. We've got no money left apart from for one person, which is Mr. Steve Bacon. He's going to come forward from the Royal Dramatic, what's it called, the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts. Steve is going to come forward and he's going to read to us, and we've got some pictures on here from the Jesus Storybook Bible. Part of it is going to be from the Storybook Bible, and then Steve will tell you where to pick up on page 892. So we're going to hear about Daniel in the lion's den. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Stephen Bacon, thank you very much. Here he is. I'm building up your part, Steve.
Things were not looking good for God's people. They'd been captured, taken away from home, far away from home, and now they were slaves. Slaves of the king of Babylon. But God had not left his people. He was with them, and he was looking after them. Now Daniel loved God and obeyed him. And God made Daniel able to understand lots of difficult things. So it wasn't long before the king of Babylon noticed him. King Darius liked how clever Daniel was. So he made Daniel his most important helper of all. And he put him in charge of lots of other helpers. But the other helpers didn't like this. They wanted the king to like them best. And they wanted to get rid of Daniel. So they spied on Daniel. They tried to find things wrong with Daniel. Things they could tell the king, and things that they could... But there weren't anything wrong with Daniel. They couldn't find anything at all. Except there was just the one thing. Every day, 3 times a day, without fail, no matter what, Daniel went to the room, closed his door, and prayed. They smiled to themselves. They said, let's get the king to make a new law so that no one is allowed to pray to anyone except to the king. Daniel won't obey this law and he will be punished. They were pleased with themselves for being so clever, and they hurried off to tell the king. And the king actually liked their idea, but he didn't know that they were tricking him. So he made it into a law. Everyone must pray only to me. And if you don't, the lions will have you for dinner. Daniel heard this. He knew it was wrong to pray to anyone except to God. He had to do what God said, whatever it cost him, even if he meant that he would die. So Daniel went to his room, closed the door, and prayed. And now we pick up from your Bible, starting at verse 13. Then they said to the king, Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to your majesty or to the decree that you put in writing. He still prays 3 times a day. And when the king heard this, he was greatly distressed. He was determined to rescue Daniel and made every effort until sunset to save him. And then the men went as a group to King Darius and said to him, Remember, your majesty, that according to the law of the Medes and Persians, no decree or edict that a king issues can be changed. So the king gave the order, and they brought Daniel, and they threw him into the lion's den. The king said to Daniel, May your God, whom you serve continually, rescue you. A stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet ring and with the rings of his nobles, so that Daniel's situation might not be changed. At the first light of dawn, the king got up and hurried to the lion's den. When he came near the den, he called to Daniel in an anguished voice, Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lion? Daniel answered, May the king live forever. My God sent his angel, and he shut the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me, because I was found innocent in his sight. Nor have I ever done any wrong before your majesty. The king was overjoyed and gave orders to lift Daniel out of the den. And when Daniel was lifted from the den, no wound was found on him, because he had trusted in his God. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. Steve, thank you very much for reading that so well. A story that you may have heard before, you may have grown up with, it may be new today for you. Whatever it is, it's an amazing story, but really it's a story about trusting God. And if you remember nothing else from this, we can see there that Daniel trusted God. But when did Daniel start trusting God? Do you think it was, oh gosh, I'm about to be thrown into the lion's den, I better start trusting God? No, it would be way before. Daniel, as we heard at the beginning of that story, is one of God's people in exile, so away from their homeland, they've been captured. But he ended up through his intellect and through his character, he ended up being a politician. If I say politician nowadays, we all think, oh gosh. But actually he was a rare one of those. He was a good politician. He was a good guy. It was like this. Dan, I don't seem to have my clicker. Did I bring it with me? I don't think I have. Could you click for me? He was like a fruitful tree. His life was bearing fruit. If you have your Bibles there, if you just flick back to verse 3, back on page 891, we can see now Daniel was so distinguished himself among the chief ministers and satraps by his exceptional qualities that the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. So he was distinguished and he had exceptional qualities. He had a fruitful life. But why was that? We click that again because of his roots. What was going on underneath the surface? If you look at verse 4, at this the chief ministers and the satraps tried to find grounds for charges against Daniel, in his conduct of government affairs, but they were unable to do so. They could find no corruption in him because he was trustworthy and neither corrupt nor negligent. Wow. If we went to Westminster and said, we've got a little job description, we're looking for someone like this, it would be in the rarity, wouldn't it? But Daniel's life, his roots, the way he was, his character, showed in his life. It's a bit like this. If you, Dan, if you click the next one, stick of rock. Anyone been to Blackpool? It's not far. You can swim it with the right tide, can't you? And you get a stick of Blackpool rock. And what does it say if we click on through Blackpool rock? What does it say there? It says Blackpool. And where does that, if you were to snap that halfway through, what would you find? What about right towards the end? Blackpool, it goes right through, doesn't it? Wherever you snap the stick of rock, you see Blackpool rock. So wherever you were to snap Daniel, as it were, and you look inside and you see he is not corrupt, he's trustworthy, he's honest. But the pressure comes. What did we say? What did Steve read to us? He said, these guys said to him, everyone must pray. Sorry, the king said, everyone must pray only to me. If you don't, the lions will have you for their dinner. Daniel heard this. He knew it was wrong to pray to anyone except God. He had to do what God said, whatever it cost him, even if he meant he would die. So Daniel went to his room, closed the door, and prayed. It was business as usual. If you click on here, it was business as usual for Daniel, because Daniel had a choice. Does he obey God or does he obey people? Daniel trusted God. And sometimes going God's way, in fact, often going God's way, is not easy. Whether that's people at school or at work, in our homes, in our family, with our friends. There's God's way and there's people's way. And sometimes we have a choice to make. Will we be like Daniel and trust God? Because the result of going God's way for Daniel was, if you flick back to verse 16, what does it say? It says, so the king gave orders, and they brought Daniel and threw him into the lion's den. Now, George, you've got some lions here, I see. Can you bring them out? Because I didn't know you were going to bring those, so I bought a lion as well. Come on out, look. Now look this. Come on, George, you come and compare lions, shall we? Let's come right down here. So can you show us who you've got there? Have you got two lions? Let's have a look. Are they the same? Or is this one a little bit smaller? There we are. They're nice. Do they have names? No. This one's called Rory. That was a joke, folks. So we've got two lions there, and I've got a lion. I've actually got a mummy lion here who's got a little baby lion in her mouth. Oh, look. Isn't that lovely? And you can stick it in there, look. And as we look at them, we just go, oh, aren't lions lovely? And then you think, thank you, George, you want to go back? Does anyone want to hold on to this lion? Just briefly. I would like it back at some point. Because when we think of lions, we think of toys like that, don't we? We think of little Rory and we think of that lion there. But actually lions are more like this. Lions are walking appetites. They are hungry lions, real lions, dangerous lions, not toy lions. And so Daniel gets thrown into this den of lions, and in verse 17 it says, it was sealed with a stone. There was real cost to Daniel's obedience. Daniel wasn't promised safety because he trusted in God, and his trust was tested to the limit. You see in verse 22, we see all the gory details about what happened in the lion's den. No, it isn't. It's really quite sparse. What does it say? Verse 22, my God sent his angel and he shut the mouths of the lions. The focus isn't on this miracle. The focus is on God. We've got another sign over here. As Daniel trusted God, so God was with Daniel. God was with Daniel. If you put this painting up here, this is a painting from 1872. Has anyone ever seen this painting before? No, nor had I. Oh, not sure where that's gone. We'll get that picture back. But it's this picture back there. We are, and we can see Daniel. Where we got some mouths are getting closed. We've got Daniel here. Looks like he's been tied up as well. This is from 1872 from Breton Riviera, apparently. But Daniel's confidence came not from his own courage or his bravery, but because God is faithful, God's character. And that same God who was with Daniel, and by the way with Noah, who we thought about 3 weeks ago, and Moses a couple of weeks ago, and David from last week, that same God promises to be with us today. Promises to be with us today. And how do we know this? Well, because the story of Daniel points forward to Jesus. Let me read to you from the Jesus Storybook Bible. The very end of the story in here says, the king made a new law. Daniel's God is the true God, the God who rescues. Pray to him only. God would keep on rescuing his people. And the time was coming when God would send another brave hero, like Daniel, who would love God and do what God said, whatever it cost him, even if it meant he would die. And together they would pull off the greatest rescue the world has ever known. And as we think about Daniel, can you click the next one, Dan? It's got your name on it. Press it again. Daniel. Daniel was like an arrow to Jesus. I'd like you, if you would, just for 30 seconds with the person next to you, think about the story of Daniel. Think about what you know of Jesus. And can you think of any similarities to what we've read and what we know? Just take 30 seconds. If you're not sure, don't worry, just have a think. But I'm sure we might be able to pick out one or two things where there's a real similarity between Daniel and Jesus. 30 seconds, go for it. Okay, so Daniel points to, click it again, Daniel points to Jesus. Can anybody think of any similarity of what we've just read and heard with that which we know about Jesus? Anybody? Is that for me? Thank you. I'm going to hold on to this line. Oh, and that one as well. Thank you. There we are. Right. Not off-putting at all. Can anybody think of any similarities? Because I think there's a few, isn't there? Say again? Yeah, people turned against him. There was if we dig down a bit, there was some charges laid against him. It was sort of trumped up charges, weren't they? In fact, they were trumped up religious charges. You noticed? And actually, we read 3 times in John's Gospel, John 19, I think it is, that Jesus was innocent. And Daniel was doing the right thing. So yeah, good one. Anything else? Yeah, he trusted God to the point of death. That's right. Do you remember where Daniel was placed? And what happened when he was placed in there? In verse 17. There was a stone. That's right. A stone was placed over the mouth of the den. A stone was placed over the tomb. We've also got that Jesus was there against a weak king, really, wasn't there? Pilate, who was manipulated by the people to do something. And what happened with Daniel? These guys come to him, the clever helpers that were jealous of him. They came to, oh, king, live forever. Oh, you're marvelous. Can you do this? Manipulated by a weak king. And he was placed, he was placed in this tomb, but also that he came out alive. So we can see there's all sorts of ways. There's other things as well we can think of. But those things here, because we see that in Jesus, we know that we are never alone. Because of Jesus, we can trust God even when we're facing massive difficulties or distresses. And because of Jesus, death doesn't have the last word. Doesn't have the last word. For all those who trust in him, death is not the last word. So as we go into this week, I don't know what this week holds for you. It's still January. Do you know that? Do you know the old rule? So 30 days, half September, April, June and November. All the rest have 31, excepting February and January that has 12,471. January just goes on and on and on and on. What will be going on for the rest of January? Because I'm pretty sure that no one's going to face an actual lion. The closest we'll come to a lion is going to be one of these. I'm pretty sure none of us are going to face actual lions, but we will all face trials and temptations. What do we do when they come? What do we do? What do we draw on? Where are we rooted like Daniel? We'll be tempted to compromise. We'll be tempted to go against God. And friends, God is not calling us to be heroic, to kind of gird our loins and go out like this. It's calling us to trust God this week. And God will be with us. He is faithful and we should trust him. Now finally, just to say, this is for all ages. Do you know how old Daniel was when they were taking captivity into Babylon? He was a teenager. Yeah? So he was a teenager. So if we're feeling young, we are young. I'm still feeling young, but I'm not young. If we're a teenager, we remember that God was with him. Daniel trusted him. If you click again, Dan. Daniel in the lion's den. Do you know how old he was in the lion's den, folks? About 80. So the picture in the Jesus Storybook Bible, good as the text is not quite true. It looked like a young boy, didn't it? He's about 80. Hands up if you are feeling 80. I want to encourage you, particularly if you are feeling or are old, not to say it's just for kids, not to say I'm too past it, not to say God couldn't use me, but like Daniel, to trust him because Daniel did when he was 80, possibly 90. This isn't a fairy story. This is a true story from God's ever-living word. Friends, be encouraged. You're not past it. You're not beyond redemption. You're not too young for it to be, you've got to wait till you grow up. This is for everyone. Everyone can trust God, and God promises he will be with us.